Hi, I'm Dr. Ronnie C. Thanks for checking out my channel. Today we're talking about COVID-19 and the vaccines that are currently available for it. The reason I'm making this video is that over the past couple of months I've met so many people who had questions about whether or not they should take the vaccine. Some of them were optimistic and hopeful, and some of them were skeptical. So if you're one of those skeptical people, or just someone who wants to know more about the biology of the virus or the vaccines, stick around. It's a complicated topic, but if we break it down and go one step at a time, I'm sure you'll walk away from this video with more knowledge than you came into it with. And it's my hope that at the end of this, you will feel more comfortable with taking the vaccine when it's available to you. Now, there's a couple of things to get out of the way. First of all, I'm not a medical doctor, but I do have a PhD in biology and I've studied immunology extensively. Second, I'm not being paid by Pfizer or Moderna or any other company for this video. These are my opinions and my understanding of the facts as they stand today. Finally, you don't have to take my word for any of this. I'm going to leave all the sources below so that you can check them out yourself and do the research yourself. And after reading that, if you have more questions, feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll get to you as soon as I can. So, with all that out of the way, let's get to it. So, the first thing I need to make clear is that this virus is real and it's absolutely lethal. I've heard people saying, oh, maybe they're just inflating the death tolls, or they're saying people that are dying with COVID or dying from COVID. But let me show you some data. This is data put out by the CDC showing the total deaths from all causes on a weekly basis. You can see there's a bit of seasonal variation where there tend to be more deaths during the winters. This data goes from January of 2017 through the end of 2020. But notice here, there is a notable spike that goes well beyond any other week in the past several years. And that elevated area continues through the end of the year. In this area, there are a total of 323,000 excessive deaths. To put it in context, that's the entire city of Riverside, California, or Corpus Christi, Texas. It's several NFL stadiums full of fans of excess deaths. So, let's get that behind us. We know that this virus is deadly. And even for those who it doesn't kill, there can be serious long-term implications. These are x-rays put out by a medical doctor who treats COVID, showing healthy lungs, the lungs of a lifelong smoker, and a COVID patient. That atelectasis in the lungs is long-term damage from the disease. So, how does this virus work? Here's an excellent paper on how the spike protein works and its functional importance in the disease. Let's look a little closer at the virus. First, you see this interior region is where the RNA, which is the genetic material of the virus, is stored. And on the outside, you have the spike proteins. On the left, you see a graphic interpretation of the spike protein, and on the right you can see the crystal structure of the spike protein as it's bound with ACE2, which is the receptor that it binds to in the human body. When COVID-19 interacts with the ACE2 protein, it causes a conformational change in the structure of the spike protein, and that allows it to fuse with the cell so that its genetic material can get inside the cell. This is an overview of that process. An important thing to note is that all of these RNAs in the bottom area, so 1A and B, S, 3A and B, E, and M, all have to get in order to make functional new virus. This is going to be very important in why this vaccine is safe. Now that we understand how the virus works, I think we can better understand why it's safe and why you can't get sick from the vaccine. This is an overview of the genetics of the virus. Each one of these red bands is a segment of RNA, and all of them have to get in, and all of them have to make their constitutive proteins in order for the virus to be effective and to be replicated. The vaccine contained this section of RNA only. The RNA for the spike protein alone is what's put in. So this means there's no possible way for you to get a viral infection from this vaccine. So the vaccine is the mRNA from the spike protein inside lipid nanoparticles. These lipid nanoparticles allow it to get into the cell, and then the spike protein, or pieces of the spike protein, are made. These pieces are then brought up to the cell surface and presented to the immune system. The immune system can then be primed and know that if it sees this protein, to immediately attack it. And this is the basis of the vaccine. So the big question is, does this work? Well, let's look at the data. The results of the phase 3 clinical trials for Moderna and Pfizer were both published in the New England Journal of Medicine. The top paper, Efficacy and Safety of the mRNA 1273 SARS-CoV-2 Vaccine, is Moderna's results, and Safety and Efficacy of the BNT 162b2 mRNA COVID-19 vaccine is the results of Pfizer's tests. The two sets of tests came out almost identical. So I'm primarily going to go over the Moderna one, but most of these results hold up just as well for the Pfizer vaccine. So this is a schematic showing the overview of how the clinical trial worked. Starting with 30,000 participants, they broke them into separate groups, and some were excluded for various technical reasons, but at the end they had about 14,000 people who were given a placebo and 14,000 people who were given the vaccine. So let's look at the data. This is a graph over time showing the percentage of people in the placebo group who wound up testing positive for COVID-19. You see over time there's just a gradual increase, and this is what you would expect in just a random group of people with no protection from the virus. Now let's look at the vaccinated group. For me, this graph shows the story. Without protection, people will gradually all get the virus. With protection, most people are protected. Here's the numerical data on the vaccine efficiency. For reference, here's the data from Pfizer's study, which looks very similar. Once again, this is Moderna's data, and on the right, you see people who were given the vaccine, and on the left, people with the placebo. I think it's interesting that starting 14 days after dose 2, 204 people in the placebo group tested positive, and only 12 in the mRNA group did. So what about side effects? I think that's a real concern for a lot of people. Let's take a look at the data. Each of these clusters of bar graphs show the 4 different experimental conditions in this study. You have placebo dose 1 and 2, and then vaccine treated dose 1 and 2. There are statistically more adverse events in the vaccine treated group. Now the majority of these are pain at the injection site, and you see the gray part of the bar means a mild pain. So that was very common in both groups, both dose 1 and dose 2. There was also some redness, some swelling, and other minor local events. There were also systemic side effects, the most common being fever, headache, and chills. Fortunately for most people, these were minor or moderate. This is an overview of the vaccine efficiency broken down by groups. You see it was effective in males and females, whites and communities of color, people older, people younger. It seems that basically everyone got significant protection from this. Finally, I've heard a few other concerns. Some people have asked if this can get into their genome. Absolutely not. The way RNA works in the body doesn't allow it to integrate into your DNA. If you still have concerns about this, leave a comment. Maybe I'll make another video about it. Some people ask if they've already had the disease or think they had the disease. Should they get the vaccine? It's currently recommended that you should still get the vaccine even if you've had the virus in the past. This is because it'll bolster your immune response and keep you from getting it again. And finally, how long does this vaccine last? We don't know exactly, but we know it's at least 6 months because the people in the phase 3 clinical trial still seem to be protected. So that's what we know. If you have any further comments be sure to leave them below and I'll get back to you. Thanks for checking it out. Have a great day.